Do you find that you do a whole lot of negotiating with yourself and sometimes not in your own best interest? Are you the king or the queen of rationalization of the behaviors that you know are not that great for you, that you'd rather not do? Well, if so, then stay tuned because in this episode, we are going to be talking about something really important, how you can use bright line rules and what those are so that you can stop kind of overindulging in things without actually feeling restricted. So, how can we do things differently? Welcome to the Do More, Stress Less podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Hasselberger, a time management and productivity coach. In every episode, I give you actionable, practical tips to help you learn to use your time in a way that feels good to you every day. No more hustling, scrambling, or struggling to keep your head above water. So let's dive in, and soon enough, you'll be doing more and stressing less. Have you heard of the dichotomy of moderators versus abstainers? If not, I'll give you a little TLDR here. So, abstainers are people who generally find it easier to not partake in something at all than to do it in moderation. While moderators are the opposite. These are people who typically find it easier to have or to do just a little bit of something than to restrict themselves altogether. So, for instance, if you're someone who, say, is trying to stop scrolling so much TikTok, who could that be me? An abstainer might find it easier to simply remove TikTok from the menu of options altogether, to delete the account, to delete the app. That is not me. If you're a moderator, you might find it too restrictive to take away the app entirely. And instead, you might find it easier to limit yourself. Maybe you're using screen time or the 1 sec app to be more mindful of the time you're spending. So it's just about how we handle these kind of things that we might not want to do as much as we're doing. But moderation can be really hard, even if you're more of a moderator. And I think I am a moderator, but I do find that it can be a bit of a slippery slope. Um, Abstaining, it can feel way too restrictive. I mean, for me, that's certainly how it goes, and it'll be up to you to decide what works best for you. But I find that for a lot of folks, abstaining can feel too restrictive, even when it technically works. So then it might not work forever, and one slip up can send you into, why bother mode, right? Where we've completely gone 180 in the other direction. So I find that instead of just having this dichotomy of the abstainers versus the moderators, there's actually a middle ground that can be really helpful. And it's a concept of bright line rules. So a bright line rule is simply a rule that you give to yourself so that you don't have to make decisions in the moment, when you might be at your weakest, when you're lacking willpower, when you're low on reserves. A bright line rule can help you to reduce decision fatigue because you're taking a whole scenario or set of scenarios and you're essentially deciding once. You're making a decision that you'll follow every time. And bright line rules can help you to moderate, but without relying on willpower. And I think that's what's often so hard about moderation is that you're relying on willpower, and willpower isn't something we always have access to. It's kind of a fleeting resource. So I want to give you a couple of examples of bright line rules. And I'm just going to give you some examples from my own life. So I want you to think about not, hey, you have to adopt these things, but how could I adopt this in my own life? How could you adopt this in your own life for things that maybe are your trouble issues versus mine? I'm sure we're very different people, right? We've got different things going on. So I'm going to give you a few of the bright line rules that I have for myself that have been working really well for me. One of them is actually TikTok. I was not joking. This is a vice of mine. I've never found any other social media app very compelling. Facebook, whatever, Instagram, who cares? But TikTok, it has got a hold on me. And because I actually really love it, but I know it's not good for me to spend a whole lot of time just endlessly scrolling, I have a bright line rule for myself around TikTok. And it's that I only open TikTok on weekend evenings. And because I have this rule, it supports better habits for myself, right? I don't stay up too late anymore on weeknights, robbing myself of sleep, and I don't worry about wasting time during the day. It's only weekend evenings. Now, you might be like, well, why wouldn't you just let yourself do it any evening? Well, I tried that and it didn't work very well because if I let myself do it on, I don't know, a Wednesday evening, I would find myself just staying up way too late. And so I now restrict it to weekend evenings. Part of that, it's pretty easy for me to not open it up during the workday because I'm quite busy during the days. But on the evenings, I actually use technology to help me with this rule for myself. So essentially on my phone, I just have it set up in my kind of screen time where I'm just not allowed to access it. It doesn't open up for me during weeknight evenings. It only opens up. It'll only allow me to open it up on weekend evenings. Now, I have another one that I use for myself as well. And it's been probably, I don't know, 15 years or so that I have had this bright line rule that I've used for myself. And I think it's worked really well. And this one is around alcohol. So while I was never a lush, when I was younger, I probably drank more than I should have. And, I'll never be a teetotaler. I'm somebody who enjoys a cocktail, enjoys a glass of wine here and there. But I wanted to give myself some clearer guidelines to make it easier for me to moderate without feeling like I was restricted. And so many, many years ago, I made a bright line rule for myself, and I've been using it ever since. And this rule is that I don't drink any alcohol Monday through Thursday unless I'm out with friends, which, as the mother, I mean, I'm a mother, I have two teenage boys. I have a full-time job running this business. I'm not actually out that often on Monday through Thursday evenings. So this felt like a fine compromise. And the reason I have that compromise in there is because you know what? I do have a couple of book clubs. And so every once in a while, we'll have a book club on a Tuesday night. And I don't want to be battling with myself. Should I have a glass of wine at the book club that happens on a Tuesday night or not? So my rule is I don't drink alcohol Monday through Thursday unless I'm out with friends. Now, your bright line rules might be totally different than mine, right? I have heard all sorts. I just wanted to give you a kind of deep dive into mine because I thought it maybe would spark ideas for you. So I'm going to give you some other bright line rules that aren't mine, but that are ones I've heard of from either my clients or from other people that I know, etc. So one person told me that they were trying to eat less sugar, and so they only ate dessert if it was at a restaurant. Now, of course, this doesn't work very well if you eat out all the time, but I think for this person, they didn't eat out that often. And so it just felt like a nice treat that they could have when they're out. And then they just didn't even think about eating dessert at home because that was not in their bright line rule. Other people that I work with have often put bright line rules around their time off. So, for instance, maybe you only check email until 7 p.m., and after 7 p.m., you don't check email anymore. You might also need some supportive structures to help with that, right? You might need to make sure that notifications are turned off after 7 p.m. or altogether, right? Lots of different things we can do there. And one of my favorite actually came from a friend of mine, an old coworker several years ago. And she told me that she just has a rule that she never misses 2 days of exercise in a row. So one day missed, not a problem at all. But the next day, she's back at it. And what that did was it allowed her to really be gracious with herself. Maybe sometimes she was having a day where she just didn't feel it, right? She was tired, she was busy, whatever it is. And she could allow herself to not exercise that day, fine, but she never missed 2 days in a row. And so I really love that as a bright line rule, a different way to think about a bright line rule. So my question to you is, when you think about your own time and quite honestly, your life, what comes up for you as a bright line rule that you could test out implementing to see if it makes your life a little bit easier and moves you in the direction that you want to go without requiring a lot of willpower? And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Do More, Stress Less podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with somebody who could use a little less stress in their life. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're excited to take action or you need a little extra support, check out the free resources available on my website or schedule a free consultation call with me. You can do both of these at alexishasselberger.com. See you next time.